Israeli offensive shifts to crowded southern Gaza, driving up death toll despite evacuation orders. Ukraine's Zelensky says the war with Russia is in a new phase as winter looms. With shuttle diplomacy, step by step, Kissinger chased the possible in the Mid-East. Today is Monday, December 4th, 2023, and this is the Dunkley Report. Israel is pounding targets in southern Gaza and ordering more neighborhoods designated for attack to evacuate, as the United States urges it to do more to protect civilians. The health ministry in Gaza says over 200 Palestinians have been killed since fighting resumed Friday following a week-long truce with the territory's ruling Hamas group. The ministry says the overall Gaza war death toll has surpassed 15,000. The prospect of further ceasefires appears bleak, as Israel called home negotiators and the Hamas deputy leader said any further prisoner exchange would only happen as part of ending the war. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will continue the war until we achieve all its goals. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the war with Russia is in a new stage, with winter expected to complicate fighting after a summer counteroffensive that failed to produce desired results due to enduring shortages of weapons and ground forces. Despite the setbacks, however, he says in an interview with the Associated Press that we are not backing down. Zelensky also said he fears the Israel-Hamas war threatens to overshadow the conflict in Ukraine, with competing political agendas and limited resources reducing military aid. And his concerns are amplified by the tumult that inevitably arises during a U.S. election year and its implications for continued aid to his country. Henry Kissinger's legacy in the Mideast is the pursuit of what's possible, not necessarily peace, in one of the world's most intractable conflicts. The former U.S. Secretary of State, who died this week at age 100, did just that after Egypt and Syria pulled off a surprise invasion of Israel 50 years ago, using shuttle diplomacy to haggle in person with the leaders of the states in conflict. He negotiated different borders and a process to protect them. His biographer, former United States Ambassador Martin Indyk, says in a Washington Post column that Kissinger would advise Israel's Arab neighbors to maintain order in the Gaza Strip and give the Palestinians the attributes of statehood, with a two-state solution possible someday. An earthquake with a preliminary magnitude of 7.6 has struck off the coast of the southern Philippines island of Mindanao. Based on the magnitude and location, the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center said it expected tsunami waves to hit the southern Philippines and parts of Indonesia, Palau, and Malaysia. But the center later removed the warning. There are no immediate reports of damage or casualties. The head of the Philippine Seismological Agency says residents of two coastal areas were advised to evacuate immediately to higher ground or move farther inland. France's Interior Minister says police have arrested a man who targeted passers-by in Paris, killing a German tourist with a knife and injuring two others. Police subdued the man, a 25-year-old French citizen who had spent 4 years in prison for a violent offense. After his arrest, he expressed anguish about Muslims dying, notably in the Palestinian territories, and claimed that France was an accomplice. French Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin said. The attacker apparently cried, "Allahu Akbar." God is great, Darmanin added. This person was ready to kill others, Darmanin told reporters. The attacker went after a German couple with a knife, killing the man. He then used a hammer to injure 2 others. Dozens of world leaders said they know the planet's dangerously overheating, and they are trying to keep it from getting worse. The next step is to turn their soaring rhetoric, voiced at the beginning of the United Nations Climate Conference, into action. In the first of 2 days of the 2-week summit, presidents, prime ministers, and royals from nations rich and poor trotted up to the microphone Friday to lay out commitments to reduce how much their countries spew heat-trapping gases and asked their colleagues to do better. Critics, advocacy groups, and even some leaders themselves said that the words of promise must be followed by deals hammered out by diplomats in the coming days. Ukraine's service says former President Petro Poroshenko has been denied permission to leave the country because he was planning to meet with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. On Friday, Poroshenko announced he'd been turned away at the border, despite receiving permission to leave the country. Under martial law, Ukrainian men between 18 and 60 years of age are not allowed to leave the country without special approval. Poroshenko, who lost his re-election bid in 2019 to current Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, said that he had planned to meet with U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson and the Polish Parliament during his trip. Friday was a day for speech-making at the United Nations annual climate conference known as COP28, as heads of state each gave short speeches to deliver their views on the planet's climate crisis, what their nation is doing, and what they think others should do. It was also a day of sadness, as not far away in the Middle East, Israeli airstrikes and ground fighting resumed in the Gaza Strip after a week-long truce in the Israel-Hamas war to exchange hostages and prisoners. And it was a day for nations to announce deals or pledges aimed at demonstrating their commitments to take action to stem climate change. A 71-year-old Romanian yoga guru and 14 others have been handed preliminary charges by a Paris magistrate on a raft of counts linked to an international ring that for years allegedly subjected followers seeking enlightenment to sexual exploitation. The Paris prosecutor's office said that 6 of the 15 people interrogated were ordered held on Friday, and 9 others freed but under judicial surveillance. Guru Gregorian Bivolaru, whose arrest this week ended a years-long manhunt, was among those charged. The arrests occurred in the Paris region with 26 people whom authorities described as sect victims of his tantric yoga school, freed. A third-party candidate has announced he is leaving Mexico's 2024 presidential race, practically ensuring the country's next president will be a woman. Samuel Garcia, the governor of the northern border state of Nuevo León, announced Saturday he won't run for president in the June Sioux elections. Governor Garcia's decision came after one of the wilder chapters in Mexican politics. On Friday, the border state, across from Texas, briefly saw 2 interim governors designated to replace Garcia, who had asked for a 6-month leave of absence to campaign for president. Garcia had to drop his presidential bid to put his state in order. Today's news was reported by the Associated Press. This has been the international news for Monday, December 4th, 2023. Thanks again for joining us here at the Dunkley Report.